probably 12 months ago, June last year, I came to London to give an announcement about Empire. We had just announced that we had made a major discovery from our maiden drilling program. And at the time, to be honest, I'm not sure that we understood just exactly what we had discovered. So today I'm really pleased to come back just in 12 months with this update, because it's an extraordinary, absolutely extraordinary discovery. And it's definitely going to, in this case, it involves titanium, critical metal, and I think it's going to change the industry completely in the years to come. So just a snapshot of the company. The project I'm talking about, we refer to as Pitfield. It's a project that we hold and control 70% through a joint venture. It's basically a large mineral system. It's a giant hydrothermally altered sedimentary basin, and it's located just a few hours north of Perth in Western Australia, a short drive in Australian terms. It's been now substantially drilled out, and so the numbers I'll quote today, the discovery is all drill tested. Titanium, for those, I'll talk a little bit about that shortly, but titanium is an excellent commodity to be in. It's a mature industry, been around a long time, annual sales in the order of $22 billion US. So we're really pleased to be, to be in a position where we can capture the growth in that market. As I said, we're located in Western Australia. Even though we're a London-listed, AIM-listed company, these assets are all Australian-based. Many of you will be realising that Australia is an excellent jurisdiction for mining, and I'll go in a bit of detail exactly where this project's located and why it's exceptional. Board and management, it's got a really strong, small board, but strong. It's been there for quite a while. Many of you would know its past history before we went back to Australia. I joined about 3 years ago when we made that move, but I've known certainly some of the directors for a long period of time, and really well structured team and board. And I just want to touch upon the last point very quickly. We do have a very clear vision now for this company. We probably didn't have that 12 months ago. We really didn't quite understand the magnitude of this discovery. But what this represents is an opportunity to have a fully integrated mine to final product process in one particular mine site. We're not going to be a mineral sands producer. We're not a mineral sands project. We're not going to make an intermediate product and try and sell that at some discounted value. This is going to be a disruptor for the entire titanium pigment and titanium metal markets, where the real value lies. So let's start with what we're talking about. What is titanium? Well, titanium dioxide initially, it's been around for about 100 years. It is the widest and brightest of all the pigments, and there is no substitute. Nobody wants to buy brown toothpaste. Nobody wants to write on dark paper that isn't quite glossy, shining, and nobody wants a shiny car that is not reflective of the sun and the ultraviolet light. There's multiple new technologies coming into the market as we become more concerned about climate change. Basic things like ultraviolet reflectance, window coatings. Electric vehicles now are consuming titanium metal because of its structural strength, but obviously lightweight. So, titanium is starting to become a really interesting new wave commodity. What does that mean in future production? Well, it's classified as a critical, well, in this case, it's a critical metal more than a critical mineral. It has multiple purposes. The majority of titanium is going into the pigments that are driven by consumer price, consumer consumptions. but it's a steady growth. And as you can see in this particular slide, whilst we're predicting about a 2.5% annual growth rate into the future, things like the metal part of the industry is growing closer to 7%. It's not a one-trick pony. There's multiple uses. And so it's not just paints and pigments. As construction grows, as I said, there's very few substitutes for this particular material. One of the critical things is from a defence point of view, about 40-50% of a jet fighter is titanium metal. And that's all due to its structural strength, heat resistance, corrosion resistance, and lightweight. So let's talk a little bit about what we found. And I guess a few people in the audience probably a little bit familiar with the history, so I'm not going to go into the why we found it, how we found it. But let's just say that this thing, we can see this over a 40-kilometre strike length. It's 8 kilometres wide. We've traced this anomaly into the basin to a depth of 5 kilometres. I don't intend to mine down 5 kilometres, but effectively we've got this giant system. We've drilled it, as I said, we've drilled it extensively now. So we've done 108 holes, 6 of those, get my maths right, 7 of those were diamond drilling holes. So we've drilled down 450 metres into this. Of those 108 holes, every hole hit mineralisation. Every hole hit mineralisation at surface or near surface. Every hole finished in mineralisation. And every metre between the top and the bottom is in mineralisation. And I've never, ever in my entire career seen anything like that. There's a reason for that, and it's the way that this ore body formed. It is so unique. It is a hydrothermal titanium deposit. It's not a mineral sand. It's not an igneous intrusion. The titanium has come out into a thermal solution and redeposited in the sandstones, like a big sponge. So wherever you drill in this ore body, you're going to hit this mineral. We announced about a week ago that we had managed to put a geological model together. These are done by independent geological resource consultants. They've signed off. They've done all the QA/QC. And to be honest, again, I was surprised with the outcome. There's 28 to 32 billion tonnes just in 1/5 of this target. Down 150 metres is where we cut it. Now, to put that in perspective, that's 1.5 billion tonnes of titanium dioxide. Now, the world consumes 10 million tonnes per annum, so this one target on its own represents 150 years of total world consumption. There's nothing else in this ballpark. There's no second player. This is like we've just finished the race and everyone's about to start. So the interesting thing that we've just also announced is that the weathered cap, there's about a 40-metre natural weathering cap. This is Australia, so it's been around a long time. Weather conditions, sun, rain, natural oxidation has altered the minerals in that top 40 metres. So whatever minerals that were there before, calcium silicate type minerals, ilmenite, whatever, is now all completely altered in the upper cap. And what we're left with is titanium dioxide mineral. So natural titanium dioxide minerals. We don't even have to chemically process it. We just have to get it out of the ground and separate it from the rest of the rock. So the weathered cap sits there, top 10 metres. We go down about 40 metres, it's all weathered. Underneath that, there's a different type of fresh bed rock and a different type of mineral. It's a mineral called titanite. It's extremely unusual to find titanite in any concentration. It's not rare, it just doesn't form normally a deposit. So the majority of our titanium-bearing minerals is again a unique, completely different to an ilmenite, a heavy mineral sand mineral. And it's not refractory. That's a key point. If it was refractory, it wouldn't have altered its surface. So it's not a difficult mineral to address. And it represents 20% of the ground, of the rock. So 1/5 of everything we dig up is going to be this mineral. So I talked about the size of that initial deposit. What I want to just flag here is we've also now gone in and measured the subset, if you like, in that top 40 metres. And that top 40 metres represents 4 to 4.8 billion tonnes, and it's a slightly higher grade because of the weathering. Again, put that in perspective, that's around about 250 million tonnes of product. So I think it's fair to say I'm not rushing out next week or the next few months to explore and find more of this. I think I've done enough of that. And we'll talk a little bit about what we're going to do next. Just pause for a second, because I think it's also worthwhile to see where we fit into the industry as we go forward. So the majority of the industry, in fact 95% of the world's titanium comes from ilmenite, which is a iron titanium dioxide mineral, or an oxide mineral. It's refractory. It basically forms in beaches and sands around the world because it's a heavy mineral and it gets washed up on the beaches and eventually accumulates. But it represents 1% of the beach, if you're lucky. The alternative supply chain is hard rock ilmenite, which is basically before it's been eroded. So it's basically these big intrusions. So Rio Tinto in Quebec at Lacteo have a massive titanium hard rock deposit. Telnus in Norway, similar. But they have to smelt that ore. They have to crush it, grind it, treat it, and put it through a smelter and separate the iron from the titanium to make an intermediate product. So it's not even a final product at that point. They've got to sell that onto the chemical companies who then process it to pigment. So where do we fit into all that? Well, given that we've got titanium dioxide at surface, given that we've got at depth a mineral that is easy to convert to titanium dioxide if we can extract it, we can very simply, as I said, build an integrated process to get from ore to final product. And what we're going to do is we're going to target where that little red circle is, the very high end of the value chain. So we're going to be targeting either making pigment ourselves, which sells between $2,000 and $4,000 a tonne, or being a chief supplier to those pigment manufacturers. So conceptually, and we're only just starting the journey, I go back to the point I raised. 12 months ago, I came to announce a discovery. That was their maiden drilling program. In 12 months, we've delivered on a lot of our promises. What we have just recently been able to do through our drilling programs is get sufficient metallurgical samples core from the drilling to start the test work programs. So if you look through where we're going with this in the next, say, 6 months, and I'll get onto that in a little bit more detail, we're going to try and differentiate ourselves from the hard rock mines. We're going to differentiate ourselves from mineral sands and come up with a mineral separation stage straight into a hydrometallurgical type step where we can leach the titanium and go into final product. There's also potential, by the way, to go to metal. And metal product, whilst the market for metal is smaller, it sells for $8,000-$10,000 or upwards. So if you're operating in the metal industry, you're operating at the premium end. So where do we fit in? We want to be the next generation of supply. We're not going to have anybody else operating in that field. So yes, the final product will look like the final product that comes out of the pigment companies or the metal companies, but the whole process of getting there is going to be completely different. What's happening right now in the industry is there's a scarcity of supply of the high-grade titanium sources, the feedstocks. So rutile, which many of you would be familiar with, again, like our natural titanium mineral, is scarce. And the big producers, Sierra Rutile, is starting to deplete its supply. So you've got multiple cases around the world where rutile supply is coming down. The alternative has been to make rutile from ilmenite, what they call synthetic rutile, which requires a dirty great big kiln and a lot of coal or carbon to reduce it. And I know for a fact that in many cases, particularly in Australia, coal is not that popular. In fact, they're shutting down a lot of the coal mines, particularly in Western Australia. So those companies can't make synthetic rutile at the moment, or will not be able to make it shortly. So there is a real problem coming into the high end of the market that we want to tap into. And we offer, I guess, a niche position, being right there next to the major producers. Talked about where we were, just quickly. Infrastructure, it's already there. So right through our licence runs a railway road straight to the port. The major Midwest port of Geraldton is a big deep sea water port. The rail's there because it's a wheat field area. We grow a lot of wheat. It's been there, a production centre for a very long time. So the infrastructure's already in place for us to ship to port. There's power systems already established that service other industries. There's even a plan to put a clean energy hydrogen hub in that particular part of the world. So it's already got the infrastructure we need. We don't have to think about that investment. What am I working on? As I said, I'm not going to go rushing back and drill. There's no value add at the moment in me coming back with more exploration news. So we've got to start working on articulating how this process actually is going to work. What we're going to put together isn't necessarily new science, it's not necessarily new technology. It may be a somewhat unusual or unique way of combining these technologies. So we will look at gravity separation, we'll be looking at flotation techniques, we're looking at magnetic separation. Each of those stages are aimed at pulling out what we don't want in the concentrates. And each of these, these materials, these minerals, have unique physical properties that allow us to do that. But this is going to be a trial and error process. The number of permutations we have to test are extensive, so it's not going to happen in a week, it's not going to happen in a month. But over the next 6 months, all of this work is ongoing. And I intend to be coming back to the market regularly with updates. So it's not going to be, I'll come back in 6 months and tell you. But we will start to crack this puzzle. We've tapped into some of the best talent that's available. I mean, there's a huge titanium mineral industry in Western Australia right on our doorstep. So we've got access to the technical people I need. We've got access to the scientists. One of the key things in Australia is the Commonwealth's Scientific Research Centre. And we're working with them, and their IP on titanium to start to come up with these solutions. Lots planned. I won't go into huge detail. There's a lot of detail here. You'll get it in the presentation. Basically, we're now completed H1 2024. Everything on that list has been done and delivered. We're now moving into the next phase. There will be some drilling maybe towards the end of the year, which is aimed at starting to build up a little bit more of our information and density to get to a mineral reserve, a mineral resource estimate. But it's really next year the focus. Come up with the process, design a pilot plant, proof of concept, make product, and take it to the market. All of that's planned for 2025. Talked about our management team. Again, this will be in the presentation. A couple of one of our directors, Greg, and our business development manager, Arabella, are here tonight. So feel free to catch up with them if you get a chance. Technical team based out of Perth, all ready to roll. I won't go into detail about our corporate overhead. Again, it's in the presentation, but we've probably got majority of our retail investment coming from retail funds here. There's a few high net worths on the register now that we're hoping that will continue to back us in. And just as a summary, I think we've probably covered a fair bit in a pretty brief period of time. But we are different. I make no bones about that. We're not going to be a copycat. We're not going to join the pack and try and compete against an industry players who've been around for 50, 100 years, old technology. This is going to be new. It's going to be different. It's a disruptor. And I think that in itself is a really important a part of the sales pitch, if you like, the importance of what we're going to do. There's a lot of advantages, the infrastructure, the natural rutile that's already there, the location is world class, and I think we're starting to draw the talent. You build it and they will come. We're getting the people we need to complete the job. So that's Empire and where we currently stand.
Thank you very much.
I think the initial brief was looking for copper. Is that now sort of dead, or is it just been parked for a while?
It's parked for a while. The thing about this is we have 1,000 square kilometres at Pitfield in a sedimentary near Proterozoic basin. There's copper workings there, artisanal copper, and we found copper in the soils. So it's just that it's not going to be there where the titanium is because of the chemistry. We don't think it's going to be coexistent. And as I said, I don't think I would be rewarded for dropping this and looking for the next possible big thing. Even though people like copper, I get it. Yeah, there's just a few of us at the moment, so yeah, time and energy will get this done.
Question over here, please. Yeah.
Hello, thank you very much for the presentation. I've got a very simple question, a bit reluctant to ask you. It's about the accuracy of your data. You've got lots of data, percentage and that. I mean, would you like to discuss how accurate those data are?
They're signed off. The QA/QC is done by independent resource estimation. The laboratories we use are certified, ISO certified standards. So there's nothing that forms this exploration target that is in doubt. And why we call it a range is because that's the code. I report against the Australian JORC code. And we are allowed in that particular code to report an exploration target, provided that we don't define it as anything other than a possible range. So I'm going to go out there and say that's a gross underestimate of the amount of titanium in that system. But that's the best number I can come up with that I'm 100% confident is there. So 100% certain we've got at least that much, if that helps.
Any other questions? Question at the back, please. We've only probably got time for one, maybe two, I'm afraid.
Very interesting presentation, thank you. I wanted to ask that this is a disruptor, a novel technique. Is it fair to say that until the process is proven, all the supposed assets you've got are not really worth the paper they're written on, even if it's bright paper? And secondly, with the environmental issues, you're digging something out of the ground. How much are you going to have to spend to return it to green site? Thank you.
Yeah, let me just think through. There's incredible value there regardless of the processing technique. When you found the biggest thing on the planet, it's 6 times better grade than the mineral sand. It's soft, friable, free digging. And it's close to this infrastructure. I mean, the only thing that's stopping us from being able to put a value on this right now is defining a process. I'm a metallurgist. I've been spending 40 years in sorting this stuff out. It doesn't happen overnight, but we will find a processing route to commercialise this project. I'm absolutely certain of that. So there will be always a value. Let me finish the second question, please. Environmental, if you go back and look at the first shot, and I probably could do that quickly myself, we're operating in literally the wheat belt on landowners' farm. These are farmlands, and we have permission from the farmers. We have access agreements in place to explore there, which will ultimately allow us to develop a project on these farms, subject to compensation for taking their land. There is no natural vegetation within these targets. There is no Aboriginal, Indigenous heritage issues because it's not Crown land, it belongs to the farmers and has done for 100 years. To return it to its current state would require me to go back and put the topsoil on and plant them a wheat field. It might be 20, 30 metres lower than it is today, but it's still going to be a wheat field. So it's an incredible position to be in. And, don't underestimate how lucky we are to be operating in an environment, in a situation where everybody wants this project to go ahead, including the guys that own the farms.